understood what he planned on doing. So it was a great opportunity for all of us to get together in a room. I think it was the first time we'd all got the opportunity to really mesh as 1,900 people and see faces from around a different country and where everyone was coming from. So Bernie came up and he gave his stump speech. He also spoke about how much of an honor it was to have run this campaign and to get the support from everybody that came out and all the people all over and around. But then he went on to say what he wanted us to do, and he wanted us to vote for him, but he did want us to support Hillary in the general election. And that's when we booed, right? We booed the idea, we didn't boo the man. And if some of you guys may recall, back in April, Bernie at a MSNBC town hall, I think, said he would never tell us how to vote, and if he ever did, not to listen to him. So that's something that a lot of us look back on and understood. We understand where, and I think some of these questions came up earlier, but we understand where Bernie is coming from a political standpoint, from the ability to maintain some positions of power in the Senate, and having to kind of play that game. However, I can't speak for everybody, but I believe that Hillary is not a viable candidate, and personally, I will not be voting for her. So that was that moment right there, and it was a little bit stressful because everybody, again, it was an opportunity. It was kind of like the beginning of the end, but it was really the beginning of the beginning. If you kind of saw how the rest of the week kind of played out. So from there, we went over to the convention center. What I'm going to also talk about is on the Tuesday that we had the media walkout and the sit in the media tent. I think some of you guys are probably familiar with that. That really came about from a group called the Coalition of 57, and that represents the 57 states and territories in the U.S. and all the delegates coming from there. So that was also, we don't really have a leader there, but kind of a speaking person is Shyla Nelson, who was a delegate from Vermont. She actually spoke at that media tent. But that came together really organically and kind of on the last minute, and we didn't really want to let kind of the cat out of the bag. So we started talking to all the delegates on that Tuesday while we were doing roll call, and letting people know that as soon as roll call was complete, we were all going to head out and go towards the media tent and then occupy that tent. So that was an exciting moment for us to kind of gather and get together. I remember having to rally up the media and let them know that, hey, this is, you guys are going to want to follow us. We're going to go out and occupy something. And they wanted to know what. And, I told them, I can't tell you. They're like, no, come on, we're the media. I'm like, sorry, I can't. So later on, I met up with some of those reporters. I'm like, listen, that's why we couldn't tell you. But it was it was a great statement. It was an ability for us to get coverage a little bit on the mainstream media, but a lot on all other forms of media. And the silence spoke volumes at that point. People were, we didn't really speak or make any requests, but people taped their mouths, people were silent, and it represented the silence, how we were silenced by the DNC throughout the primary, and then also as they tried to silence us during the whole convention. So I think that was one of the points where I think the DNC realized that they miscalculated how they were treating us and how we all would come together. And I think that was a shining bright moment where all 1,900 of us and the 206 delegates from California really unified and made a strong statement and a strong point.
Okay. Now I'm gonna let Brian speak also on his view on walking out.
So I'm going to be talking about the walkout, but I also want to talk about just everything we did in the convention in general. I've made points about this after the convention was over, when I was able to be by myself and make sense of everything and digest everything that went on in those 4 days. Because I can tell you, nobody on this panel and none of those other 1,900 or so delegates thought it was going to be what it ended up being. Nobody expected it. And so, to me, all the stuff that we did was nonviolent. It was civil protest. It was civil disobedience. In the same vein as Martin Luther King Jr. and Mahatma Gandhi, it was the same idea. So we did not employ violence. We did not employ slurs. It was all completely peaceful. And I think we did a very good job of representing our candidate and our candidate's positions and his points of view in doing what we did and civilly protesting, but making sure that all of your voices were heard and the voices of people all across the country. So going back to digesting everything, so it's really inspiring because it showed me the power of people and the power of ideas. The establishment was afraid of us. They were afraid of what we did. They were watching us. They were trying to find out what we were going to do next. Everybody was trying to figure out what was going on, what we were going to do, what we were planning. They were very afraid of us. And we actually protested during Leon Panetta's speech. He had made a speech. And actually, I'm very proud of Oregon because Oregon took the lead. Most of the convention, the California delegates were the ones who were taking the lead. And I would hear from people in other delegations, Oregon, Washington, Puerto Rico, all the different delegations, they would say, wow, we are amazed that you guys are taking the lead on this, and we're really impressed, and we're all behind you. So I'm really proud that our state took the lead for the most of the time, but I want to talk about this moment where Oregon and Washington took the lead. So during Leon Panetta's speech, he was making a speech about war, and so they started chanting, "No more war, no more wars."
Brian,
they just kept chanting that.
We're gonna come back to that moment. Before we get into what happened inside the convention, we're gonna talk about. We're gonna give the mic to Lauren to talk about the TPP unity movement.
Okay, so I'll get back to that about later. Thanks.
Okay, so before I started LA for Bernie, I was an activist and an organizer on the issues, and the TPP is one of the issues that I've been fighting since 2012. In fact, I met Arturo in May of 2015. He asked to speak at a protest I did at a Hillary Clinton fundraiser in Beverly Hills to ask her to come out against Fast Track. So I got the idea to do this action when I found out that the platform, that Bernie Sanders' campaign was not going to submit any of the minority reports that came out of the platform committee. Because as people may know, Bernie got 80% of his platform planks in there, but 6 of them were not, and he got minority reports: fracking, carbon tax, single payer, Palestine, TPP, and I forget what the 6th one was, but the one with the TPP basically said that the TPP should not come up for a vote in the lame duck session of Congress. And we thought it was interesting, since Hillary now says she's opposed to it, that her platform committee members and the DNC platform committee members wouldn't allow it to. So when I found out that they didn't submit it, I tried to figure out if we could submit it from the floor, if we delegates could submit it. So we had a loose committee of people looking into that, and it was basically a 3-part plan. We realized that if we wanted to submit it, one of the ways we could do it was to have Dan Malloy, who is the chair of the committee, ignore the 48-hour rule, which says it has to be submitted within 48 hours, but he could ignore that for good cause, and the good cause was that the Bernie delegates would have submitted it if they knew that Bernie wasn't. So we pursued that. Also, we were pursuing how we could find a sympathetic state chair that would introduce it from their microphone, and Alexis was working on that. We ended up not finding anyone, so we decided to do a mic check from the floor, and we had a conference call the Thursday night before to plan this out. There were 105 delegates on the conference call, and then on Sunday night we had a meeting. We organized whips. We had whips from almost every state, so there were about 26 whips in the room, and we decided that Jeff Engel, as a Longshoremen's Union member and a delegate from Washington, would lead it off from the Washington delegation by saying, "Mic check, mic check, mic check," and then we would all start shouting, "No TPP, no TPP." And we actually, somebody must have leaked this, because we got, also there was the unity statement that we decided. Susan George, a delegate from Northern California, drafted a unity statement for Bernie and Hillary delegates to sign, basically saying that it should not come up for a vote. So we started getting Hillary delegates to sign that. We had a cocktail party of the California people, and it was very civil and very pleasant, and all the Hillary delegates signed it. Of course, after we started booing the next day, we couldn't get any of the Hillary delegates to sign it. But we did this mic check, even though we got a text from Bernie that said, "Do not protest." And this was Monday night. and we ignored it, and the idea was that as soon as the first person mentioned platform, we would start chanting, and Elijah
One more
Cummings
minute.
was the chairman of the platform committee, so he mentioned platform, we started it going, we chanted for several minutes, we got a lot of coverage. Also, John Lash and Clem Balinoff, delegates from Illinois, had come up with these great TPP signs that were this big, and they were folded so we could get them in with our papers, because we were told we were not allowed any signs. So these signs were seen all over, and we held them up all week, including over Obama's speech, although everybody voted not to chant but to be silent. So we did it over Obama's speech, and they also did it in the Ron Kind, I think he's Wisconsin, Ron Wyden from Oregon, because he was one of the prime movers of the TPP from the Democratic side. So they did it at the breakfast when Ron Wyden spoke in the Oregon delegation. So basically what we're doing is we have a group, California Burners to Stop the TPP. We plan to work on the Congress people while they're home for the summer during summer recess. We're going to have citizen lobby meetings. They don't agree to come out against the TPP, we're going to protest them. We're going to occupy their offices, and we're going to vote them out of office if need be.